Hello folks! In today's video I want to discuss ways that you can use bees to make an income. As you get into beekeeping, you're going to want to find different methods to make a little bit of side income so you ain't got to take money out of your pocket to manage your colonies. So these 6 different ways that I'm about to bring up are a few of them ways. And just to go down the list, you got wax, you've got pollen, you've got honey, there's pollination services, there's queen sales, and then there's nukes, selling nucleus colonies. So that's 6 different ways right there. And out of these 6 different ways, starting at wax and going to nukes, the top is probably your least profitable. And then as you get more down the list, they each become more profitable. But at the same time, as they become more profitable, they also become more challenging to complete. So that's why there is more income in those options. I've got about 5, maybe 6 weeks before I could start queen rearing here. We've still got about 6 inches of snow on the ground, and I'm starting to see signs of spring. The maple trees are trying to push out their little buds, and things are looking great, and I'm ready for spring. So before we get too much into this, I want to apologize for the chirping off to the side. I am raising a few chicks for my farm project this summer, and I have them going in a brooder off to the side. So if you hear them, that's what's going on.
Beeswax. Now before you can sell beeswax, there's a question you have to ask yourself. When I manage my bees each and every year, am I using any harsh chemicals that can be absorbed into the wax? Chemical-free beeswax is used for several things, including cosmetic uses, such as soap and lotions and different things of that sort. One of the more common uses for beeswax is to make candles, and there are several different molds available for candles, different styles and sizes and various things. Now, making the candles is one step up from just selling the wax, so that does up your profit there a little bit by making the candles, but you're going to have a little bit more time invested in it. You're going to have to buy the wicks and all that different stuff, so keep that in consideration. To give you a kind of a ballpark on where wax is based on prices, a 1 ounce block of beeswax, like you see here, is sold right around the $8 range. And a 5-pound block of wax is going to be between $30 to $40, and maybe sometimes higher. Now these prices are based on where you're selling from. If you're out in the country and you're selling from your home, the chances are you're probably not going to sell a whole lot, and when you do sell, the price is going to be to the lower side of the scale. If you get into the city, maybe do some farmers markets, or just find you a little health food store that's willing to sell your stuff, you're probably going to get a little bit more money for your product. Bee pollen. Bee pollen is collected from the hive with a pollen trap. This trap is placed on the hive, and as the bees enter through it, the pollen is raked off their leg and falls into a drawer where it can be collected by the beekeeper. Now let me touch on something here real quick. If you're going to use a pollen trap to collect pollen for your bees, keep in mind that the bees do need pollen to thrive. If you take all of the pollen, the colony cannot grow. They need their pollen to raise brood. So if you're going to collect pollen, try and do it a few days on, a few days off. That way the bees get some of their pollen. Pollen comes into the hive at different times of the year at many different colors. The colors vary from different species of plants and trees. And it all has great value. It's also known to offer several great benefits. And around these parts, it varies in prices, like I say, depending on where you are, but anywhere between the $10 to $12 range. Honey. Honey is the most obvious way for a beekeeper to make an income. Honey can be sold in various styles, either bottled, spreadable, which is usually crystallized honey, cut comb, and even flavored, as you see here. I can tell you firsthand, to get the most out of your bang for honey, you're best to offer it in all of these different styles. That way you're sure to please more of a crowd. To give you an idea on honey prices, and this varies from year to year depending on how the honey crop goes as far as the yield. But on average, a bottle of honey, I get $8 a pound. For a gallon of honey, you're looking at close to $50 a pound. And of course, this is just like anything else I've mentioned in this video. It all depends on where you sell. So keep that in consideration. Pollination services. Now this is a step up from the first three that we've talked about. There's a lot more work on the beekeeper's behalf and a lot more responsibility. Usually pollination services are needed by such places as garden centers, orchards of apples and cherries and peaches and all of them different fruits and vegetables. To give you an idea, a pollination service is usually about a week or two period. And this is once the flowers start to bud and bloom, the hives are brought in, and then after the pollination services, which is usually about the time the petals start to fall off the trees, usually the orchards want the beehives removed so that they can spray and not impede on the bees. The price of pollination services all depend on your location, the crop that you are pollinating, and it's usually priced on a per hive basis. The downside to offering these services is that while your bees are out doing their pollination, they're also in touch with other bees, whether they're feral or brought in from another beekeeper. That gives your colonies more of a chance of catching a disease or a new pest, so they need to be greatly monitored. And since this pollination service is usually only a couple weeks at the longest, there's usually not much of a honey crop to resell. Now to give you a rough idea, we have an orchard down the road that has probably close to 1,000 apple trees. And they pay a beekeeper, I believe it's $55 to bring in a few hives, and that's $55 per hive, and he leaves them there for 2 weeks. I do not know how many hives he takes in and how much he is rewarded at the end of the operation, but on more of a commercial scale, the almond crops in California pay several $100s per colony, in which they're usually brought in by the semi-load. Unlike smaller operations where a beekeeper just throws a few hives on his pickup truck and hauls them in and drops them off, returning to pick them up a couple weeks later. Selling queen bees. We all know that the queen is the heart of the colony, and without her, the colony would dwindle to nothing. Queen bees can be raised several hundred at a time. But just for this scenario, let's say we raise 100. Raising them is not the hardest part of this accomplishment. The hardest part is getting them mated. So let's say you raise 100 queens, you set them all up in their own mating nukes to get them all mated, and after the period of mating, you only come out to where they're 75% mated, the other 25% never returned, died, or whatever. And either way, the 25% never got mated. So that leaves you with 75% of them to sell, or 75 queens. Now a queen bee in today's world sells for about $30 a piece. 30 times 75 is $2,250 that you've made in about a 3-week period. So as you can see, this one here, this one is one to think about, people. This is where the money is in beekeeping. But it is no easy task. It's very intensive on the beekeeper, and there is a lot of steps to follow in order to complete the process. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have said hardest. It's just it's out of the beekeeper's control, because not all queens return from their mating flights. Some get smashed on windshields, get eaten by birds, whatever the cause, they just do not return. Selling nucleus hives or colonies. A nucleus hive is often referred to as just a nuke. A nuke is an established colony containing an active queen, pollen, honey, and brood of all stages. They are usually sold in 5 frames. Beekeepers prefer to purchase these over packages because of the massive jump start they have being established already. Here in Ohio, I see a wide price range on nucleus colonies. It all depends on the genetics and things of that sort, but they vary from $150 up to $180. And as a bonus, here's number 7. And this one is not cut out for everybody, so think about this before you choose to offer this. And that is doing bee removal services, or cutouts. This is a great way to create an income from beekeeping. You can do it full-time, you can do it part-time, depending on the demand. In most cases, cutouts are done in houses, either to the walls or the eaves or even sometimes the floors. Now I recommend that you at least have some experience in beekeeping before offering this service. That way you know what you're up against. I mean, after all, you are responsible once you start the job to complete it, and it is somebody else's house, so keep that in mind too. And the price varies on several factors, like where is the colony located? For instance, do you need a ladder? Is there any obstacles in the way? Other things to consider are you working above your head? Is it easy to get to? And all of these are going to tweak your price just a little bit in one way or another. My price starts out at $50 an hour. And from there, I add on other factors like, do I need a ladder? Am I working from a ladder the whole time? If so, it goes to $80 an hour. Am I working above my head, cutting the colony out of an eave of a house? Well, that's going to increase the price too. So before you decide to offer this service, you need to sit down and break down all these things and come up with your own price. And lucky for you, this is kind of a new thing that not a whole lot of people offer, so the pricing's pretty much up to you, just keeping it reasonable so that you're able to keep yourself busy and keep the income coming in. If you choose to do this full-time, I recommend you take the option and get insurance to cover your butt just in case something would go wrong. What if the ladder would slide and fall through a window? You just never know. So it's best to be prepared just in case. This service kind of pays you twice. You know, you're going to get the cash at the end of the job, and at the same time you're going to get this colony that's probably lived in this house for a few years, giving you these good genetics to pass along and to breed from. So there's kind of 2 bonuses, and at the same time the jobs can go from easy to where you're working on the ground, doing all of the work, real simple, to where you're working on a ladder, working above your head, and that's just a pain in my butt. So, you know, think about these before you start them.
Well, there you go, folks. I hope that gives you a little insight on how you can make some money with your bees, and I hope you'll put it into effect. If you already haven't. Thanks for watching, and if you liked the video, don't forget my thumbs up. I appreciate it.